So two-handed tapping, in part one, just explain the technique and why people might want to use it when you're playing guitar. In this part, in part two, we're going to have a look at maybe a little exercise that we could have a practice if you want to have a go at doing two-handed tapping if you've never done it before. Just quick before we start, I mentioned a previous video I've done on hammer ons and pull offs. You really want to be comfortable and familiar with your hammer ons and pull offs before attempting tapping. I would view it as an extension, tapping as an extension to hammer ons and pull offs. What we're basically going to be doing is performing hammer ons and pull offs using our other hand. So if we're not comfortable doing them with our normal hand that we typically play our fretted notes with, in my case my left hand, then we're going to be struggling doing it with our other hand. That's going to be even more awkward. So if you're not comfortable with the hammer ons and pull offs, I suggest take a step back and make sure that your technique there is up to scratch. By that I mean, well, we're going to have a go at a little 3-note pattern on the high E string. So we're going to play a series of 3 notes. We're going to start with the E on the 12th fret. Then we're going to play C on the 8th fret and an A on the 5th fret. Those 3 notes. And we're going to use the tapping technique to play those. So once we get into it, we're going to be playing something that sounds a little bit like. Obviously we can speed it up later, but that's what we're going to be aiming to achieve. Now sticking with those same 3 notes, that's what I've told you about in advance. With the hammer on pull off thing, if you're not quite up to speed, have a little practice on the second of the 2 notes, the 8th and the 5th fret notes, the C and the A, and just practice your hammer on pull off technique. That'll be a great little warm up for you before we start adding the tapping bit onto it. So forget about the 12th fret note for now, just the other 2 notes that I've described, the 8th fret and the 5th fret. Just using those hammer ons and pull offs. You don't have to do it fast. Sounds a bit like a siren. You can build your speed up as quick as you want when you get more experience. But make sure that you're comfortable doing that before we get into doing the tapping, because it's all going to have to work together nice and smooth, nice and clean, in order for it to sound good together. So let's assume you're up to speed with there. Let's move on to adding that extra little note in up on the 12th fret. So literally all I'm doing is performing a hammer on and a pull off on that 12th fret using one of my fingers on my picking hand. I'm using my second finger. I'll explain that in a moment why I'm using my second finger, but if you notice that's the one I tend to typically use. That's what I'd probably recommend using. Like I say, I'll explain it in a moment. So in terms of the 3-note pattern, I'm going to start by playing the 12th fret note. That's the first one I'm going to play, the E. So I'm going to play it by hammering on with this tapping finger to create that E note there. As you can see, I'm not picking it, I'm not plucking it or anything like that. The only way that I'm sounding that note is by my finger hitting the string against the fretboard. I can do that on any note, anywhere I want to, but in this example we're using the 12th fret on the E string. So in terms of the pattern, that 3-note pattern, I'm going to play that 12th fret note first. So I'm going to hammer that on, and then I've got my other fingers in position on the 8th fret and the 5th fret. So I'm going to start with that 12th fret note. Once I've played that, I'm going to perform a pull off on my tapping finger. So now that note's sounding, my 8th fret note, and then it's faded out a little bit now. And then I'm going to perform a pull off from my 8th fret to my 5th fret. That's going to give me the 3 notes. So it's going to be sounding like. That's the sequence. Those 3 notes. Don't worry about repeating them or playing them fast again. Speed means nothing unless they sound clean and unless the technique is good. once I get comfortable doing that, then I'm going to start repeating the sequence of those 3 notes. By the way, the count is a triplet count, so 1, 2, 3, or you can say happily as you play them. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. To get the timing right, you can also set your metronome to make sure that you've got good even timing on those notes. Now, although the actual technique itself of producing that little tapped hammer on is fairly straightforward and simple, there's a few pitfalls that you might need to watch out for. If you noticed, I'm using a slightly distorted sound on the amp. That's great, it makes these notes jump out and be clearer. I did that so they sound better on the camera, they'd come across a little bit better than the clean notes. You can play them on a clean guitar as well, that's fine. The issue that you've got, and the issue that we've all got, is that when we're doing something like a hammer on, it's quite an aggressive thing to do on the guitar, and we might accidentally sound other notes. So what I mean by that is, let me just play hammering onto that 12th fret, and because I've got a distorted sound on, anything that I hit by accident or just rings out is going to be exaggerated. So I'm going to get loads of extra noise and stuff I don't want just by playing that note. So I'm just going to play a few of those taps on that 12th fret just to show you what I mean. I'm not going to play anything else, just that 12th fret. What's happening there is the actual process of me tapping the guitar is causing the other strings to ring and make that sound, just the same as if I was to tap the guitar body. You can hear those strings ringing out. That's something we need to watch for when we're playing two-handed tapping technique, that we don't have the other strings sounding dirty and ringing out like that. The way around it that I've used is by muting and damping the strings that I'm not playing. So you may or may not have noticed I was using a combination of, when I was playing on my fretting hand, I was actually, my finger there that I was using to play that note, I was just resting it gently against my B string so that my B string won't ring out. So I'm muting that note on the B string there, so that string's deadened. And then I was also using a little bit of palm muting on my, what's normally my picking hand, in this case it's my tapping hand, on my other strings, to stop the other strings from ringing out as well. So if I'm not doing any, I'll play the pattern without any muting and damping. You can hear the other wrong notes being picked up by the amplifier. By muting out those others, just damping out those other strings, and that one just down there. I get a lot cleaner performance by doing that. Something that you're going to have to work on. It's a little bit of touch and feel technique, but it's good to practice it right from day one, so that you're muting out the notes that you don't want to be ringing out, and you get a nice clean pattern. Particularly important, the more distortion and the more overdrive you've got on your amplifier and the more effects you've got, the more important that is, because whilst the amplifier will make your good sounds sound brilliant and better, it'll also pick up the bum notes and the fluff notes, and it'll bring those up for everyone to see. The next thing, I did mention the finger I was using. I was using my second finger on my what's normally my picking hand. The reason for that, for myself, it is quite simple. If you're just practicing an exercise like we are now, if we're just going to have a go at this tapping exercise and nothing else, that's fine. You can use any finger. Perhaps even people might want to use your first finger, because normally that's your strongest finger. But the reason why I was using my second finger is because normally when I'm playing the guitar and playing other things as well as tapping, I will play my electric guitar with a plectrum. So I'm going to have a plectrum in my hand, which is held between my thumb and my first finger there. So my first finger isn't available for doing the tapping. So in that case, if I wanted to play, I don't know, a guitar part that's got some normal picking in and then some tapping, then I need to keep my plectrum in my hand for the picking bits, and I use my second finger for the tapping bits. So as an example, if I wanted to play a I can switch between a picking technique. I know that was a lot of rubbish what I just played. I can switch between a picking technique and a tapping technique. Keep the plectrum in my hand for after I've finished tapping. And I'm good to go again with my pick. So that's the reason why I tend to use my second finger rather than my first finger for tapping. Again, very, very similar to the hammer on pull off technique. So if you're okay with the hammer on a pull off technique, the tapping technique shouldn't be too much difficulty for you. It's a case of making sure you get accurate positioning, so you're nicely in between the frets, so you're hitting the fretboard, not the metal bits. You're hitting the right string, you're not hitting the string next to it and making that sound out and create wrong notes. And the final thing to be aware of when you're practicing is try and make all of the notes sound even in volume. So you don't want your tap note to be really quiet and your others to be really loud, like. Or vice versa, you don't want your tap to be really heavy. And your other ones to get drowned out. So try and get all of the notes in the sequence at a similar sort of volume level. Again, that's going to be a practice and experience thing until you get used to how hard you need to hit the tap and how hard you need to perform the hammer ons and pull offs. You don't want to be hitting it hard enough that you're trying to knock a crack through the fretboard, but you need to hit it hard enough so that the note sounds. If you don't hit it hard enough, it'll just choke out. If you're hitting it too hard, it'll sound fine, but your finger will soon get tired and you'll get a big blister on your finger as well. So watch out for blisters, just like when you start playing beginner's guitar and you start getting blisters on your normal fretting hand. You're not used to doing this, hitting the strings, so take it slow, take it easy, practice in little bits and you'll get there eventually. Use your metronome, start off slow, concentrate on technique and keeping it clean rather than speed. The speed will always come later. And as with every technique that you practice, the main thing that you need to do is enjoy.